This is a time to uprise. Welcome to today's show. You may remember a video I put up a week or two ago about how they were going to get people to go into smart cities. I talked about how they were going to make sure that your house was green, and a lot of people wouldn't be able to afford to turn their houses into green homes. By that, I mean, use this for an example. Think to yourself about how they make you have certain dimensions in your home, certain requirements you have to have for approval for your home, or they'll take your home or they'll shut your home. They won't let you live in the home. You have to have it approved. Well, they're going to put these rules in. They already are in the UK, where you can't have gas, you can't have fireplaces. Everything has to be green efficient. People will not go along with the transition. They'll be able to evict people, and a lot of people who will even try won't be able to afford it. And of course, then you go and look at people who are renting. The landlords will have to raise rent in order to meet these requirements, which will force people out. They will not be able to afford to live in these places. Thus, the 15-minute smart cities become more and more appealing to people out there, even though what it is a trap. It's a prison. And I can't believe this article came out from the AP, the Associated Press. The UN and the World Economic Forum agenda won't force people to live in smart cities. The claim is that governments can forcibly remove people living on polluted land or water and require them to live in smart cities under a plan from the World Economic Forum and the United Nations called Agenda 2030, which is a real thing. It's literally in writing. You could look at it for yourself. And with all the things going on with the chemical bombs that are going off, the chemical accidental trains and plants that are being blown up, well, this is what people are beginning to think and realize, because this is verbatim what they're saying in Agenda 2030 is talking about polluted land, how the governments will be able to confiscate polluted land or water. So that means if you're living there, just like we saw in Ohio, right? In Ohio, what happened? That was a test run. They threw everybody out of that town when that happened. That's what they will do in your town, my town, all of our towns. And that is one of the ways they'll get people into smart cities. So for those of you that don't know what a smart city is, it's a living hell. And they're going to market it just the way I'm about to show you. And look at the clever way. It's not really clever to me. I mean, it's sick to me, but you could see the tones and how they market this. This is how mind control is done. Marketing is evil. It is wicked. Look how they market this towards people for convenience, for clean, being a good person if you're in a smart city. And of course, they talk about behavioral control. They're talking about how they're going to control your behavior, not just by how you live, what you say, and how you act. It's full on behavioral control of your life. This is the smart city in a nutshell.
Does this look familiar? Sitting in gridlock traffic, rushing from work to appointments, going to be late for dinner again. The road rage kicks in. This is the life we're used to. But what if life could look like this? An oasis of green parks, endless sidewalks, and empty roads. Impossible? Well, it's actually the concept behind the 15-minute city.
15-minute city, or the 15-minute neighborhood, is certainly something that's become very much, you can say, in vogue recently.
Paris is working towards it, so is Barcelona and Portland, and now Vancouver also has a plan in place.
Big new move number one was that we build a city where, for all residents in the city, 90% of your daily needs are within a walking distance.
When I put the closest grocery store in my GPS, it's more than a 30-minute walk away. But in a 15-minute city, I could walk to the grocery store, post office, doctor's appointment, gym, hair salon, dentist, you name it, all within, you guessed it, just 15 minutes. A solution not just for gridlock on the streets, but also for carbon emissions. In fact, the goals of creating a more walkable city were announced as part of Vancouver's recent Climate Emergency Action Plan. And the Vancouver Plan and Project team are already in the process of figuring out what neighborhoods should look like and how to translate that into land use strategies.
Just look at your neighborhood and look at your walk score. The walk score actually just tells you how many good things you're a short walk from. Where we get really low walk scores are in the parts of the city that are largely suburban. And so there's some sections where, single-family homes are really far from a lot of retail. And in those areas, the actual answer is to deliver more of those commercial services to them.
The Plan and Project team will be addressing council with options as early as July, and they'll also have some pilot project ideas. But for this plan to really work, you don't just need to change the city.
To meet the environmental goals that the country, the province, and the city have committed to repeatedly, is to change behavior.
So in Vancouver's latest Climate Emergency Action Plan, they announced new incentives to drive less, like connecting cycling and walking networks citywide, in hopes that 80% of trips by 2030 will be made either by foot, bike, or transit. They also announced disincentives for driving, like implementing transportation pricing in the Metro Core and creating a carbon pollution surcharge on residential parking permits. But all of this takes some time.
Cities change slowly over time because you actually have to build them.
The team says they're looking at how to move Vancouver towards this vision over the next 30 to 50 years.
So that is a living hell to me. I can't, if I was going to imagine hell, that would pretty much be it. You're living with people who are like Stepford wives. They're walking around. Everything's great. Everything's wonderful. Give me my boost. Isn't everything great, Tommy? What are you eating? A cockroach, Mom. Isn't that wonderful? Anybody who complains, of course, will be an outlier. They'll be slapped on the wrist and locked in their home because they won't be allowed to even move around and navigate their lives because, well, if you're not conforming to this and okay with it and happy about it, you're not performing the behavior that they want you to give off, I should say. So the Associated Press comes out. They say governments can forcibly remove people living on polluted land and water and require them to live in smart cities under the plan from the WEF and United Nations called Agenda 2030. This is their assessment. This is false, they say. This is hilarious because it's literally right on their website. The UN's 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which the World Economic Forum is helping to implement through a partnership, outlines broad goals related to issues such as economic growth, equality, and the environment. And remember, the equality thing is all about brainwashing women, black people, minorities, anybody who isn't white. You're getting brainwashed into a thing called equity, okay? That means equal living. That means they're saying, oh, well, you've been shafted your whole life. Everything's going to be equal. It's equal enslavement. It's modern day enslavement. They use the environment as the thing that, oh, well, that's the reasoning for it. They use equality by saying, well, you're all going to have the same amount of money because it's not fair because black people or women don't have enough money as the white man. It's a way to suppress everyone. Everyone is going to be the poor. There's going to be no middle class. You'll be poor, and then there'll be elites who are not living in these cities. They'll be out polluting all over the place, flying in their private jets. They'll never be filmed, and they'll never be held accountable for any of it. So it outlines the goals related to issues such as economic growth, equality, and the environment. It does not discuss removing people from their homes, nor does it refer to the term smart cities. Regardless, the UN does not have the power to allow prohibit countries to take such an action. Yes, they do. And we've seen that our government has handed over power to places like the WHO, places like, the WHO pretty much. They've given power to the WHO. And NATO has power through the WHO. NATO's on top of the WHO. So whatever NATO says, the WHO will do. And again, all they have to do is call any kind of call some type of epidemic, some type of emergency like we just saw, which was the test run, and they can come out and say, hey, this area, this city is contaminated. There's a 75% rate of people who are infected. Okay, we're going to get everybody out of these cities. We're going to take you out of your homes, and we're going to move you into a quarantine smart city. And they're going to go, and they're not going to have a choice. They don't want you to ever know this stuff, so they try to use terms like, it doesn't say that, but in reality, the World Economic Forum, if you've seen the videos I've done even this past year, there were people there talking about 15-minute cities and how we need 15-minute cities. So they weren't hiding that, and they constantly talk about that. And they're saying it's for your convenience. It's to lock you up. Do you see all the pushback they're getting now? They want to make sure that that's not going on anymore, and their foot's on the gas pedal. You're not going to be able to complain about this stuff anymore. You're going to be completely under control. They're not worried. That's why the resistance has to be now. So it goes on to say the facts are social media users are falsely claiming that the UN plan will give governments the power to uproot people and force them to live in specific cities, with some baselessly trying this supposed shame to the recent burning of toxic chemicals at the site of a train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. The sickos at the UN World Economic Forum plan to confiscate all polluted land and force people into smart cities. One tweet read, resist, make people aware, wake up. Amen to that. Amen to that. And again, they wouldn't talk about this stuff and share this stuff if it was so crazy. They would just be like, what are they talking about? If they weren't guilty of doing it, common sense would be, why would you even bring attention to it? If somebody did a video about me and said that I was like something that I'm not, something insane, why would I bring attention to it? It's guilt that is the reason they bring attention to it. They bring attention to it because they need to start working the other people so if they hear this kind of stuff, that they're already programmed to smack it away and say, I heard the real facts, I heard the real news, right? Because they're just under complete mind control. I can't believe the fact that they even wrote this article. It's shocking to me because now they're bringing attention to Agenda 2030. But they know that the person who reads it, instead of having a brain and going, what is Agenda 2030? Let me look into it, that they'll just go, oh, okay, anything I hear about getting people into smart cities because of Agenda 2030 is a conspiracy. I will not look into this any further. Apparently, people just made this up off the top of our heads, even though they openly admit that this is what they want, and they talk about it over and over, and they sign treaties with the WHO, giving power to the... It's incredible. Absolutely incredible. And they're already setting you up for the next pandemic, right? We hear them over and over. Well, next time it's going to be a lot worse. Next time, why would there even be a next time? Why would we even discuss this? You know, wouldn't you be like, oh, it's over, yay, if it was actually a real thing? No, because this is a controlled thing. So you say the 2030 World Economic Forum agenda states that the government is forcibly allowed to remove residents if the land and the water are too polluted to live on. A woman states in an Instagram video, the government will force these residents to live in smart cities. The residents do not have a choice to opt out of living in a smart city, or they do not get to stay on the polluted land. Is this starting to make more sense now? Yeah, it is. I mean, I'm glad other people are talking about it. But Agenda 2030, they say, does nothing of the sort, and neither the UN nor the World Economic Forum has the ability to grant government such power. Actually, they do. Them and corporations are the ones who control the government. So, sure, the government will be the ones who have to say it on TV, but they're getting their orders from them. So why don't you mention that, Associated Press? Oh, right, because you're not an actual news source. They go on to say the plan was adopted in 2015 by the UN General Assembly, the main policy-making arm of the intergovernmental organization, which includes all member states. In 2019, the UN and the WEF signed an agreement that outlines ways the organizations can work together in order to more quickly implement Agenda 2030's goals. Oh, man. I mean, you know, the AP's obviously control. I mean, all these media outlets, I really do find it amazing that they bring attention to it. I feel like it's a misfire on their end, but maybe they know something that I don't as far as mind control goes, because I don't see how this is working on anyone with common sense. But I guess, like I said earlier, it's just ingraining in people what's fact versus fiction without them actually using thought. They're just being told what's fact and fiction. And they're actually, you would think that this article would make people go, let me look up what this is. But they don't. So they say the agenda strives for universal peace and prosperity over a 15-year period with 17 broad goals such as end poverty in all its forms everywhere and make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable, right? And of course, cities have been inclusive. They haven't always been safe, obviously, because they're cities. Sustainable. They've been somewhat sustainable. I mean, everything going on now is being done on purpose so that they can bring in the smart cities. That's why they're letting criminals run amok in cities. And people like literally are doing crack on the streets. Like, has anyone ever seen this before? I mean, it's unbelievable. Like, they're showing people in New York City falling down. I'll probably do a separate video on it. They're like zombies on, like, you know, fentanyl and everything else. Where are the police? Where's the government? Right? I mean, clearly being done on purpose, but the libs just don't seem to understand it, or they don't want to understand it. And the scary part is they seem to want control over their lives. They seem to want the government to be, you know, and that's communism, to be in total control of them and their thoughts. Because they're really, at this point, not humans. They have no thought process whatsoever. So they say multiple goals, including the latter, cite reducing pollution as an aim, but the agenda does not direct nor give governments any new ability to dictate where people live. It does mention that one of the goals is to reduce the adverse impact of cities on the environment with measures like improving waste management and air quality, but at no point does it talk about removing people from their land, even if it's polluted. Now, they'll have the ability to do that, especially if it's chemical pollution. We're not talking about polluted like somebody threw a soda can out the window and it's in someone's lawn, okay? When there's black soot going through the air and it looks like a nuke has gone off, and the government comes in and tells everybody in Ohio to get out. Oh, right, but the government didn't have control over that, right? They literally said, get out or we'll throw you out. Oh, but NATO and all these organizations, they don't have any control, right, over these things. They're the ones who are sabotaging the world. NATO, look no further. And, of course, the World Economic Forum. So that's what their narrative is here. They go, the UN does not have an enforcing mechanism. The UN's member states did adopt the Agenda 2030 and its Sustainable Development Goals in 2015. What this means is that countries pledge to work to achieve the goals and targets in the agenda, but it's up to each country to decide how to go about it. The UN cannot force countries to implement the goals. Clearly they have. Clearly they have. I mean, why are all the countries on board then? No country's a nationalist country anymore. No country's like, what do we care? We're not listening to you. Who are you? You weren't elected. You were put in these positions. Right? It's so clear what's going on. So, again, the smart cities, the 15-minute cities, the fact they're talking about Agenda 2030 and the AP is pretty interesting to me. Unfortunately, it will not wake people up. But maybe me reading this article, maybe you guys sharing it so people actually look into it will wake people up. But this is what the plan is. It's wicked, it's evil, and that's exactly what these people are. I thank everyone for being here. Hope you're doing well. God bless you and your families.